Okay. Nice to see everybody. It's our first session of this year for a global online lecture series. Today we have Defluence, that's the team name of Bumjin and Yihyun, as you can see on the screen. Defluence is based in United States. Yihyun is based in MIT in Massachusetts, and Bumjin is based in Indiana of United States. They are a design lab enabling better everyday life through meaningful design. And we are really looking forward to listen to them, and especially about their research and works around the home and pandemic issue. So welcome, Yihyun and Bumjin. Over to
Great.
you.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation and great to see everybody. It is quite late night here. It's 11 p.m. So if we get stuck or if we kind of lose our words, please please forgive us for being in a kind of a very late night mode. Yeah, so I'm together here with Bumjin, colleague of mine, and today we'll be sharing our project on the design research project on we call it Finding Human in the New Normal, Envisioning Post-COVID Future. So let me first share the screen. We'll get started. Okay, so do you see my screen, everybody?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, so yes, so this has been a collaborative project that we have been leading, and we would also like to credit other people who have been involved in the research process also as well. So together since last May, I think May or June, we started to look at what are the what are kind of the experiential values that we can observe from the pandemic situations, and how can we use those values to think about possible futures beyond COVID. So we are Team Defluence, based in Boston and also in Indiana. We both have backgrounds in architecture and design, and yeah, so we've been thinking about urban, about the living spaces with our backgrounds in architecture, but at the same time using design research methods to conduct our background research, and also engaging in ideation process as we created these different visions for the future. So life beyond COVID, and you know, we don't have to say much about this, right? Because we're all going through it. And actually today marked the 1-year anniversary of when the WHO announced the pandemic to the whole world. So we've gone through this together for 1 year. So through all these, you know, social distancing, quarantines, the new protocols, it really impacted the way we have engaged our life. And what's interesting to note here is that during this past time, everything became a service. Everything came into our homes as we started to live, continue to confine ourselves within the home, especially here more in the US and abroad rather than Korea. Korea's has been like sustained kind of the normalcy more than other places, and which is great. But we've seen that many of our activities have entered into our home as a service, you know, from cooking services to healthcare, or even fitness, everything, entertainment, you name it, everything became a service. And what's interesting as we go through this is that, you know, just like people have hoarded toilet paper in the earlier phase of the pandemic, people have been hoarding technology. So technology became like the new toilet paper that everyone wanted to bring into their homes to continue connected, or to continue enjoying part of the life that people used to have before. And what's interesting here is that, and we're seeing that more and more, we are continuing to live in data. we're generating data, we're living in data, and we're really becoming part of data. We have to know how to, control and engage with data in these times. So this is a context where we are questioning what is the meaning of technology and how can we design technology and how can we also design experiences enabled by technology. And what we would like to kind of focus here is that as we are designing these experiences, how can we create these experiences that are value driven? So that are driven by, and in our case, we call it human values, values that we as a collective and that we find important in our lives, in our current lives. And through these, what we tried to do was use these values to envision the possible futures that we can imagine. So, and we would like to put out here first is that these are not the predictions of the futures that we'll get to later, but these are different options, different possible ways of thinking about futures. And these, I'll say this now, are more provocative than realistic. And please keep that in mind as we go through some of the future visions that we will present in the second half of the project. And as you'll see it, we've been going through this whole process as research through design, or design through research. So research has been quite heavy in our case, conducting ethnography, qualitative research, and secondary research to build a foundation layer in order to get to the design phase or the conceptualization phase of just thinking about different futures. Yeah, so in this design research phase, there are three components that we have really tried to bring into our, let's say, our recipe, our cooking recipe to imagine these futures. One is of people to understand the human values and experiences. Second is about technology. So we can, having a deep knowledge, deep understanding of what are the future technologies. The third part is a design. Using those together, using the design methodologies, creating experiences and envisioning futures. And through that, we were able to create visions of tangible and of this digital experiences. So with these, what experiential values can we observe from our collective pandemic situation now? And how can we leverage or use these values to envision the post-COVID futures? The research process, it's been, let's say, about 6 to 9 months long process that we have went through. So it involved using emotional keywords as a way to kind of prompt users to think about their context and their experiences. And we've conducted interviews with those using those keywords, and then identifying value experiences. And from those, we also added on, secondary research to look at the socio-cultural trends of what's happening now. And then through a quite heavy clustering and grouping process, mapping and coding of these interview results, we were able to identify the 12 different value experiences that we have used as a trigger, as an inspiration to come up with these different futures. In our process, we've tried to talk to as many different groups of people as possible, both in demographics and also in locations. This is not a comprehensive list of the users or the people that we have reached out to. In our case, the user ethnography or the user research has been used to create a thick data, not big data of collecting as many, a lot of different data points, but thicker qualitative story-based information, so we can use that as a way to use the anecdotes, use the stories to use some of those personal experiences as a way to drive the values to create our understanding of how we can imagine the possible futures that are people-centric, that are human-centered. So in the interview process, we would like to highlight the very first part, how we got started. And what's interesting here is that we use the emotional wheel as a starting point. The research shows that humans have over 34,000 different emotions. And in our case, we use emotional wheel and used we extracted some of the keywords that can be relevant to our pandemic experience, from frustrated, enlightened, joyful, bored, vulnerable, worried, these different kind of emotional keywords to probe into individual experiences. Since we can't, if you ask someone, oh, what was your experience like? It's hard to imagine what it is. So then we would use these emotional keywords so that can be used as a way to evoke that moment in time, so people can think about not just the experience, but then also can use that to explain their situations, what their space was like, what their let's say surrounding was like, what their relationship was like with others. Yeah, it's just a quick sample of all the interviews that we did, the data collection that we did, and also mapping and coding of the data to get to the identified 12 different value experiences. So this was our I guess, many attempts in trying to clustering and then to identify, group the qualitative research data into the layers of emotional experience, the value experiences. So here you see that we tried to group them by placing the very personal experiences to the center that are closer to these emotions. So the core areas, the first 4 rings are very related to personal experiences. And then the further that you go out, it's related to you and someone else's, your relational experience between multiple people, and also between you and your community or your space. So as further you go out, you would see that the experiences become more spatial or more community oriented and so forth. So that was kind of our way of creating a framework in organizing the research data. So I'm going to go through these 12 different values quickly, just to explain what are the 12 themes, the 12 value experiences, the keywords that we have extracted. And I'm sure that many of these relate to your own experience too. And if you do so, take a note of it. And I think it'd be great to kind of discuss about those afterwards as well. Yeah, so the first layer is all about the behaviors and adaptations, about your own behavior and how you have adapted to those situations. So the first keyword being self-care. And I think self-care is something that we all have started to practice and be more mindful of in this situation. How can we create a new routine in this case? How can we adapt to changing situations? How can we reinvent our space around us, our living rooms, our homes, or what we have, to create a new stream of new stimuli so it's not so monotonous? And how can we also reallocate time to have meaningful time? And also that's related to productivity, right? How can we, as we're all doing remote work, remote education, attending things remotely, how can we create a space that can enhance productivity? How do we deal with Zoom fatigue, just like now, being in front of the camera all the time? And also, what do we do with all this additional time, hours that we have gained, but not commuting? So how are people being creative in terms of productivity? Control is also an interesting value experience that we have identified here, which is related to how you control your time, your routine, or how do you even take ownership or control of your space. So all of these are related to control. And we also have noted that all of this overload information is really overwhelming. So overwhelm is an emotional keyword that's really tied to the experience of control, that we feel like we lost control of our surroundings because we're so bombarded with information. And that is also tied to identity. So if you don't have control of what's around you, your surroundings, time, information, and so forth, that breaches into our sense of identity too. How do you can I take care of myself? How can I manage my own productivity? How do I create meaningful time? Or or is there a way that I can control my space, my surrounding? Or where can I feel comfortable and be myself? So those are all related to the value of identity. the second layer. So we're moving from inner layer to the next layer. It's social connection is huge. It's been described so many times. Everybody's been talking about how they feel isolated, disconnected. Although we are connected with virtual conferencing technologies right now through Zoom, we can't really feel the spatial ambience, right? I can't read the room. I can't see your facial expressions or what the space is like. So it's hard to get that human cues in this virtual digital connections. And also, I think what's really important to think about, to remember, is the chance encounters. Meeting in the hallway after a lecture, right? Running into somebody, or how do you have these spontaneous experiences in the virtual space? Can we recreate those? So those are some of the experiences that's been described by people. Spontaneity, as I mentioned earlier, being on the go, exploring around the town or traveling, being spontaneous, and enjoying all the time without worrying about the consequences. And especially so in the earlier times of the pandemic, where we constantly had to think about, am I being exposed to COVID, or how do I make sure that everyone around me is safe, and can I enjoy the experience of spontaneity or the fun. And which is directly related to exploration. And exploration is also, it's not just about, exploring with your physical body around the town, but then also being mentally explorative also. How can I find new stimuli, energy and inspiration through being explorative? So, we've seen people talking about using Airbnb experiences or these subscription services that comes into their home so they can explore their new hobbies, or continue to explore what they used to do before. And then now we're moving from the third layer to the second layer to the third layer, which is more related to spatial and interpersonal relationship between your community, your city, your neighborhood around you. So locality and familiarity are the two keywords here. Locality being my vicinity, my neighborhood. As we're confined to our immediate, let's say, your zone, right? We're seeing, resurgence of these hyper-local groups, that people are being connected to their locality even more than before, even though we can, virtually connect to anyone around the world, just like if you're in China, Korea, or us in Boston. We transcend the physical boundaries. We can connect, but at the same time, we're seeing that people are being more connected to their immediate neighborhoods, through these hyper-local media apps or media outlets that you can use to connect, or also exploring physically just around their neighborhood too. So kind of really trying to be more connected to their immediate neighborhoods. Another one is all these creative ways of creating micro networks of exchange of products or exchange of resources between, let's say, local restaurants, trying to get rid of their ingredients that's being sold to the people around them, or doing product to product bartering and selling of neighborhood products. Familiarity is all related to about normalcy, about being in the constant space, and being familiar with your surroundings. And that's kind of these two are questions for us for how can we then think about these experiences and translate those into the digital space. The last two are transparency and accessibility. Transparency being very related to information also, right? And that's about the overload information. At the same time, not knowing the source of that information. And we've seen lots of fake news happening last year, and also not knowing who to trust. So that's really related to the value of transparency, that people were they wanted certainty. They want to know, to build trust in the system. And lastly, accessibility. And accessibility is a lot related to, having equitable access to the digital space. And, and we're seeing, the rise of digital divide between in communities and globally too. So those who have access to the digital space like us, we can continue to enjoy our lives as before, as opposed to people who don't have access to digital technology. So who is the in-group and who's the out-group? And how can we manage this accessibility issue as we move further into migrating to the digital space? So these are the 12 different value experiences that we have identified from the interviews, and these were used for us to not just organize the interviews, but also to use that as a way to think about how can we envision the future cities, future daily lives, using these keywords as a way to, as an anchor, as a foundation.
So we have been thinking about the context of how we may apply these different value experiences. So this is the question that we gave to us actually. So what if our world is constantly revisited with pandemic level of infections that require us to be always adaptable and flexible? I mean, giving that as a context to our future envisioning exercises. So we started thinking about make public social experiences into decentralized and distributed way. Like since we have been experiencing an exodus of public life into privately owned online spaces, and from those we have seen a web of physical and digital spaces to merge from those, and how we are kind of navigating between our physical experiences in person and also through the digital and virtual ones through some of the connected devices. So it's like we would like to imagine a possible impact, kind of pushing this idea further, an impact of this distributed and public social experience in our lives, our cities, neighbor, the spaces around us. So as Yihyun briefly mentioned, so we are trying to tell the story of the possible different futures, not really like predicting the future at this point.
Yeah, so in our case, so what we did was we created these 4 experiences, the 4 possible futures based on the keywords that you have seen, the value experiences, and we'll go more into each one. So as what you're seeing here, and this is kind of our diagram of how we're organizing the 4 visions too, is that right here you're seeing the 12 different values that you have seen from the circle diagram. And what we're trying here is the mapping the values with some of the key trends, signals and trends, the socio-technical trends that we're seeing, products and services that we're currently observing at this moment, and then using that as a way to think about what is a key value or the key experience that each of these services are representing, and how can we use that to use that as a starting point to think about a possible future. So you'll get it more, and we'll go more in depth. Yeah, so the first one is all about a city where this public social experiences can be delivered to you on demand. So think about that. Okay, so pixelated, it shouldn't be this pixelated, but so here the signals and trends are mostly related to the first, let's say the first 4 values of the self-care, control, productivity, exploration, and accessibility. And I'll briefly explain about the signals and trends that we have identified that we thought were useful in thinking about this context. Yeah, so the first two ones that's related to self-care and productivity and accessibility and exploration is about these on-demand services that you're seeing. From food and beverage, of course, you can order those to your homes. But we're now also seeing the use of autonomous vehicles and delivering, let's say, untapped is a big keyword, right? So how can you deliver things without, without being face to face? So, autonomous vehicles being used to deliver medicine or medical goods between hospitals or between the hospitals to maybe the elderly care home or within the elderly care homes to deliver food. And so a lot about accessibility and then having also control of that situation. We identify those as the related keywords here. And what's also interesting is that it's not coming from this year, but we're seeing this trend of the use of autonomous vehicle. How can you use the interior of that space to support the different programmatic needs? So as we don't need to, drive the cars, maybe we can use the time to work from the car. So, office on wheels, or it can be, a doctor's office on wheels. So we're seeing lots of different ways of adapting autonomous vehicles in various ways. Another one more related to also self-care, productivity, control, and accessibility is these connected experiences that's coming into our homes too, right? From fitness to healthcare, as I mentioned earlier. So, I don't know if you have cycles, a connected bike or a connected mirror, these are, big things right now. Everyone is trying to get into buying these connected devices so they can have their personal gym at home. So we're seeing a huge surge of demand in these connected experiences, the smart IoT devices that can deliver these on-demand instructions at home. At the same time, what's interesting is, the big tech companies are also developing, and it's been not just this year, but it's been a multi-year research and R&D going into creating smart furniture, smart objects that can be introduced in your homes, like in the bathroom example, right? The Google has patented these health monitoring devices so that your mirror, when you look at your mirror, it can detect your skin tone, it knows your weight. It can also, even the smart toilet, it can analyze your bowel every day to see what kind of a health situation that you're in. So we're seeing this connected devices coming into our homes. Third one is that as everyone is buying online, e-commerce is a huge boom, which means that we're also seeing lots of things being delivered to our homes too. So, Amazon's been going into looking about the last mile delivery. So how do you deliver from the logistics from the distribution center to your home using, let's say, autonomous vehicles or drones so it can deliver to your home? And also creating these small micro logistics centers, bringing that closer to our homes. So it doesn't have to travel a long distance, but you can have a distribution center in your local areas, similar to, I don't know if you know Whole Foods, but Amazon has Whole Foods, the Amazon lockers, so you can go and pick up your packages from from the local vicinity. So, I think those are some of the signals and trends that we have looked at. And then these are some of the keywords, the value experiences that we have identified from the previous phase: productivity, self-care, control, exploration, accessibility. With those, we're asking, what if all these, not just the food and products that we buy, but everything else, all of our social public experiences can be broken down into small chunks and can be delivered to us through these a network of autonomous, let's say, navigation systems. How will it impact our neighborhoods?
So we try to show this narrative through these drawings. So activities and experiences we used to do outside can be delivered to our homes, not just Amazon, Coupon, and Netflix. In this future, there are programmed autonomous vehicles that hover around the neighborhood, delivering in-person healthcare and governmental services, as well as bite-sized cultural and entertainment experiences. Our previous public social experiences will be now available in subscription-based delivery sizes as a companion to online experiences and delivered to our homes. So in this future, constant movement of autonomous delivery system will occupy our streets. A busy network of autonomous cars and drones will deliver products, services, and experiences to our homes. This constant movement of autonomous systems would work as new infrastructure in our neighborhood. So this extensive network of delivery systems and demand for at-home experience will further accelerate decentralization of public and social activities. So we can just call them just like an Uber and experience them as before. So this increasing demand for at-home experiences will redefine the role of downtown district or the main street, like a Hongdae or Garoskil, like where we used to go to restaurant, shops, and CGV. So in this future, as last mile delivery of services and goods will become an essential layer of city infrastructure. So this includes the need for micro fulfillment and micro warehouses to be located close to our homes. So we may see vacant stores and offices in the neighborhood being reorganized and repurposed into micro warehouse and fulfillment centers. So in this particular drawing, red blocks represent this new warehouse and fulfillment center as a new node and hub in this area. So this is the question we want to ask about this, like a first vision. What if all public social activities and experiences beyond food and products are delivered to our doorsteps?
Yeah, so this could be your discussion point perhaps afterwards. You would like to know, you can also send us what you think. What would happen if everyone just continues to stay home, work from home remotely, and we're seeing everything coming into our homes. So not us going into a public space to enjoy the experiences before, but we can do that all from the homes. What would happen to our neighborhoods? What would happen to our city? What would happen to all of these social relationships? So that was the first one. Second, is we call it home gateway to connected experiences. So a lot of these ideas, the first, second, third, and fourth, it's kind of layering upon the previous one to another. So keep that in mind as we describe these. So in this one, again, I would like to introduce you first through the social signals and trends that that inspired us to think about, to envision this version of the future. These are related to social connection, locality, familiarity, exploration, and spontaneity. A lot of the kind of the interrelational values that we talked about. So the first group of the trends or some of the services that's emerging right now are related to the digital experiences, right? So a lot of the virtual things happening here. So that's related to creating social connections, spontaneity, familiarity, locality, and exploration in the digital virtual space. So how can we create spatial and human cues? In this example of, there are many software that's coming out, but then using, let's say, gaming environment as a way to recreate the experience of a workspace. So we thought that this example of TeamFlow, the software, was quite intriguing because they're recreating. You can create your own office, and you can see that you're sitting at your desk. There's a little icon that's hovering over. So imagine us being in a Zoom call, but we're actually placed in a classroom or a lecture hall. So I know that where you're sitting, I know where I am. And if you stand up, it's also indicated saying that you're about to leave and I'm not interested in this anymore. And you can see someone walk away. So, how can we bring these physical, human cues into the virtual space is what we're seeing right now as we go further into the pandemic and, moving towards a new normal. Another one is the use of Minecraft, the gaming also, again, platform to recreate this virtual space. So the first year MIT undergraduate students have recreated the entire campus on Minecraft. So you can, because they can't be on campus, students have created this 3D space so they can navigate around the different buildings to see, oh, this would have been my lecture hall, this is where I am. So we can have that, enjoy that place memory, right? So when you're walking around the city, you do have that place memory in you. Can we have that in the virtual space as well? Second, related to creating immersive and creative network, creative ways of remotely engaging in work, culture, and entertainment. So as I mentioned earlier, the use of gaming technology or the gaming environment, we're seeing that quite a lot in the entertainment, right? An interesting example we thought was this rap artist hosted his live performance concerts on Fortnite on a gaming platform and where participants were able to enjoy this connected real-time experience all together in the game, where as you see the rap star being represented in an avatar and performing in that space. And again, another one, the use of gaming environment to again recreate your office space as well. So you're not just always sitting in front of the screen, but are there ways of making it more immersive and more engaging? Third, signals and trends that we thought were interesting was kind of the development of the immersive technologies, from AR, XR, VR, we're seeing all these terms popping up. And this example of AR contact lens, and now it's products, you can actually try those. And so this has been showcased at CES last year, or the year before. So it's on market right now, and you can use that to put on a layer of augmented reality and receive have information as you're actually walking around the space. Or in the case of in this one, the sensory reality pod is another, I think, interesting development of bringing in the different sensorial experiences and combining that with your virtual experience. So sensory meaning, air, smell, sound, temperature, humidity, all of that. So you can also add on the layers of sensory experiences. So using all of those, I guess the keywords, the value experiences that we have identified from locality to exploration and accessibility was if we can sensify the digital content, let's say we can do that, and also recreate the human spatial cues in the virtual space, will it replace the in-person social experiences? Will it not? And if so, then how will it impact the way our public spaces are organized and how our home spaces are organized?
So we imagine a future where virtual sensorial pods are quite affordable and widely available throughout our homes and public spaces. So this drawing represents that the physical appearance of the pod. So interior of the pods can be designed to fit a specific program, like an office meeting space or drinking bar or fitness. The size of the unit vary to accommodate 1 or 2 people up to 5 people. I think you guys also know why we specifically say 5 people right now, because everything is up to 5 people in Korea. And it can connect to as many pods throughout the world to enable connected social experiences. So these virtual sensorial pods will become an essential feature for newly built homes and renovations. So it may also become a desired feature to be shared with community. So the pods become a gateway to connect with others in immersive ways. For now, we are having a drink in front of the laptop to meet our friends through Zoom or FaceTime. But we can imagine like booking a happy hour with friends in different cities. Like I can walk into bar that is equipped with this pods in Boston and meet friends in Seoul and join the virtual immersive happy hour. So this will set itself as a layer of immersive tech infrastructure, the next level of Wi-Fi and hotspot, something like phone booths now. And this is another like a question we want to ask, like if all of our activities are moved to a digital virtual space, what would happen to public spaces like parks and squares out there? Because if everything is moving to the digital, then what is the physical like a space out there? What's happening? So that's another thing we can like talk about.
Okay, third, traveling stories. So this is all related to how we experience the world and how we create memories of the places that we go to. So some of the signals and trends, let me also go through this again quickly. Related to the value experiences of locality, familiarity, exploration, community accessibility, and transparency. So think about all of these values that related to as you kind of explore and try to experience the public spaces or different countries, different contexts. So some of the ones that we have selected here are related to how now we can access stories in the products too. So the products are not just a functional product that we buy, but we're seeing examples of secondhand stores are being popular, where you can, in this case, you can access the story of the previous owners, like where it went through, who used it, like why, what is the story, the history behind a product. So that's kind of more on the physical stories, like the little cards that you can get as you purchase the secondhand product. So it has an embodied value that comes with it. But now we're also seeing the use of blockchain technology. In the case of a service provenance, it provides a whole chain of information using blockchain, so you can really follow the supply chain of a product. Let's say when you buy a fish, you get to see where it was caught, who it was caught by, where did it go through, how did it travel to you, how did it get to your supermarket. So you're not just buying the product at the point of sale, but you're also getting the full history of the product. And it's being used to show the brands or the product transparency and authenticity. So it can be also applied to, let's say, an art, let's say you purchase. Can I also learn about the history of the artist, but then also who was it owned by before, and also to ensure transparency or to ensure authenticity of the product. Similarly, IBM's Food Trust, it also creates a whole network of supply chain of foods. You can have a clear view of where everything is moving. And this has been also adopted in the current COVID case last year to track the goods, the medical goods. where are, which hospitals are in need of medical goods, where is it being, supplied to, where is it coming from? So now we're seeing the use of technology to track the supply chain and making that whole information visible to you and accessible to you. Second one is more related to how we experience the city or the neighborhoods. I don't know if you have tried. I tried a couple classes on Airbnb experiences. So Airbnb, right after the pandemic, or even before that, they started this experiences feature where you can take a class or go on a walking tour with someone who's in somewhere else. A friend of mine took a tour in Prague. So you're sitting at your desk, but then you're seeing someone walking around the downtown of Prague with their iPad and telling you a story. So that was an interesting way of having that local experience from home through the virtual storytelling. Another one, Google Street Art, Google Street View combines the Street View together. So you can use a Street View, but in this case, go to the city of Sao Paulo in Brazil. And you can, as you walk down the alley, you get to see all the street art and the stories around it. So it's a way of using, these digital virtual technologies to have these more immersive storytelling of the local storytelling. VR also being used too. So now we're getting more immersive, right? So you can put on a headset, go on the underground tour of underwater tour, and then as you hover around different areas, you get to hear stories about the fish or where you are. So it's really combining that storytelling with the virtual, digital, more immersive technologies. Yeah, so those were some of our inspirations or some of the signals and trends that we have looked at to think about kind of the extreme scenario. So what if our primary mode of experiencing the world is through products, meaning we cannot leave the home because of maybe the recurring pandemic situation. So in this case, can we then experience the world through things that comes to us?
So as she mentions, it is quite limited for us to experience and make new connection by traveling, as we all experience right now. So we can travel to other places through VR, online street view, and other modes of virtual storytelling. But this experience can be further supplemented by product-centered storytelling. So from the airport, resort in somewhere like a beach, Seoul to New York, products can travel around more than people. I mean, they can go anywhere. The memory experience from travel now comes to you through the products. Within this digital world, like a locality is captured and transferred to us through contextual storytelling. So focused around the movement of product because they don't have any restrictions. So we imagine a future where the primary mode of accessing new stories and experiences are through products that are delivered to us. So each product has its unique story that captures how it was made, place it went through, people it encountered with, and events it experienced during its delivery route. For example, products can capture and deliver local stories of places it went through and unfold the stories to us in an interactive way. Maybe so this image also shows the package taking plane instead of us, people. And this is another question for traveling visions. So in this future, travel and movement may be restricted due to the recurring pandemic, but movement of products will not. What if products travel and experience for us instead?
A bit extreme, but
Yep.
keep that in mind. Okay, So now we're going to the last one. So thinking about the digital publics. So up to now, we talked about how everything is going to be digitized, virtual, moved into the virtual space. So as right now, as we're experiencing now, the access to digital, the access to the virtual will become more and more important. So at this point, we want to think about the digital public infrastructure. Should there be a public infrastructure for digital space that supports these hyper local and global communities, and what it should be? So now we're going to the outer layer of the ring related to transparency, accessibility, locality, community, locality, and all the way tying that to your identity. So some of the signals and trends that I would like to highlight here are the first groupings are related to the place-based media. So hyperlocal media that we talked about. So Nextdoor is a one that's being used here a lot in the US. I heard in Korea there's a similar one, 당근 Market, where you're connected to your very local neighborhoods to maybe buy goods, exchange services, or even just to meet people who are nearby. So you can go to somewhere together or a cafe together, or you can ask somebody to do something for you. So these are all examples of hyper-local media, right? That's very local-based and contextual-based. And I think you probably all use the feature, the Google Maps Explorer feature. That's another way of experiencing place-based media, meaning as you're going through that space in time, you get to access the information that's happening right now. Probably right now you'll see, here are restaurants that are nearby that has the highest ratings, but now you can also see if I'm moving through New York, it can tell me right now there will be this concert here, there's this parade happening. These are the current news that's happening in your local neighborhood. And maybe you can also check all this information to a different point in time. Tomorrow, what's going to happen tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, just like how you're accessing weather. Also, the social media has been quite, been a big way of us having access to the social digital spaces, right? So our sense of belonging is not really tied to our physical location, but used through social media. And it's interesting that many people use different type of social media to connect with different people. So you may have your community on Discord. I have my community on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. It's all different type of people that you follow and different people that you join based on maybe what they like or where they access to. So we're kind of developing our sense of navigation in the digital space through the use of social media and how we use it. So some of the other ones that I would like to highlight is how do you then control the information that you get on social media? Right now, all that algorithm is being developed by the big tech companies, and we don't really have control of what information comes to us, right? I look on my Facebook newsfeed and it's tailored to me, but then I don't know what kind of algorithm is being used to filter that information. So an example of, this is some from MIT, where they have created this web platform where it can collect all of the information from different social media, but then gives you make that algorithm visible, so you know how to filter, how to turn off or on the information that's being delivered to you. Another one more on the decentralizing the information network, this is kind of questioning who stores the data. Meaning when I upload something on Instagram, upload my news on social media, or when I do these digital activities, that information is owned by the companies that provide me the service. But I'm the content generator. I should also be owning that data. So now we're questioning who has the ownership of data and how do we control that? Some other ways, the other examples here are related to accessibility. So how do we, right now, we access digital data, digital information through Wi-Fi, 5G network, all of these transmitting, the technologies that allow us to transmit data. But we are questioning, we are looking for examples of, are there other ways of transmitting information and data? Can we use light to transmit data? So we're not completely reliant on, on radio networks. Or can we use existing city infrastructures to use those as a focal point to distribute or make that as an access point for data? I think these are kind of interesting examples and a starting point to think about data accessibility and gateway to that digital public space. Yeah, so those signals and trends took us to this point to question about the digital space. If it's going to be more and more essential for us to have a social life, to engage in public life, then how can we envision, or should there be a digital public infrastructure? And if so, how should it be? What is important? What are the experiences? What are the values that it needs to support? And how may we see that and implemented in our cities and in our neighborhoods?
So we used to meet people on the street, plaza, for communication, but right now it is happening in various social media platforms. Unlike public spaces, these digital networks are owned by corporation, private companies, rather than community. It's like, there are 6 icons over there about the social media platform, but 3 of them are from one company, right? Like Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, they are all owned by Facebook. So like, our digital public infrastructure is formed where everyone can participate in public and civic life in the digital spaces. So this can start with aggregating feeds of information from different social networks, but you can control how users can view and filter information. This allows us to read and discuss relevant issues in our community, as well as participate in the governance of both online and physical spaces. So creating online versions of public spaces, like healthy spaces that create social connections, a sense of community identity, and where difference and similarity can be discussed. So at the same time, this digital public infrastructure should be accessible to people with all levels of digital literacy and accessibility. So smart public lighting infrastructure of the city can also serve as an information portal where residents or visitor can access the community-specific and localized information when they're in that specific area. So particularly in this drawing, that smart public lighting is working as a portal. So whenever people moving around or passing by, the red dot is active. So that means the people who approach to the smart public lighting, they can access those data through this smart public lighting. So we can get information about our community, strengthen our connections to our neighborhood, and actively participate as community members.
Yeah, so imagine walking down the street in a new city that you've been to. So I'm now in Boston, but then I go to Seoul, and then I walk, through the cities of Seoul, and then as I pass through that portal or that area, I get the information about that neighborhood. I get to join that digital neighborhood. So it's not just the physical neighborhood that I gain access to, but I can also experience the digital information in the same way that I experience the physical city. So the closer I get to the full center of that city, I get more information about the neighborhood. The further I move away, that information disappears. So it's about giving locality to information as well, to that, intangible information. Can we give tangibility to it?
So this is our last question because this is our last vision. So what if a digital public space is provided that anyone can access? Can we leverage existing city infrastructure to create a localized digital public experiences?
Yeah, so back to our 4 visions and 4 questions. I hope you took a note of it. Should have made a slide with all the 4 questions here. But from thinking about how all of your experiences are delivered to you, that was the first one. What would happen to your city and neighborhoods when all of your experiences come to you? And what if we all have the gateway to the digital public spaces through the virtual space? Also, how is it going to impact the way you experience the social the city? Third one, more about the products, about the storytelling and memory making, right? Can non-living objects also live and have its own life through the collection of stories along the way? Can stories travel? Can products travel? The last one, as Bumjin mentioned, about the digital public infrastructure. So more thinking question about the access of data, giving locality to data, and thinking about the accessibility of data. Who can access and how do we manage that? Yeah, so those are the 4 questions. And we would also love to know if maybe we can do a popularity vote, which one that you think is most intriguing or most provocative, which one you think is, might be more relevant for us to think about the questions. So these are our starting point to put it out there as a way to think about the possible, let's say, problems of the future. So some of these are, optimistic, some of them are dystopian, some are utopian, some are kind of neutral. So this gives us a way to think about the future spaces, imagine, some of the possible issues, and also use these to think about the current experience too. What are some of the problems that we may need to discuss right now as we, imagine this pathway to the futures? So yes, so this is what we wanted to share with you today. Yes, Bumjin, do you want to introduce us to this?
Sure. But I mean, I thought everyone is in Seoul, but not. So maybe they don't really can't. But so we have exhibitions, whatever we just presented today. We have an exhibition space at Seoul Hall of Architecture and Urbanism. So it's around next to Sicheong.
The city, it's very right next
City
to.
Hall. So this exhibition start on 16 March, which is next Tuesday. So if you guys have have a chance or time, please visit. But you guys need to make a reservation before.
Really? Yeah, so if you're in Seoul and want to kind of, learn more about the project that we have just described, more details, please go visit. Unfortunately, we won't be able to visit. It's too bad. We would love to go. We've been working on this project and this exhibition for a while. If you do so, please enjoy. And yeah, thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. It was absolutely interesting. And I will make the vote result among those 4 areas and let you know what we all picked.
Sure.
Thank you so much. It was really interesting. I've never thought emotions can be such a nicely mapped out and diagramized, with wonderful stories. I think your talk will be very, very helpful for lots of students in our graduate school who are mostly working on the thesis based on these issues of the post-COVID and the domestic spaces and also public spaces. So it would be really helpful. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Thank you for having us here.
Yep.
Sorry if I spoke too fast, everybody. I got too excited to share that.
No, you made it on time. So that's good.
I also had a lot of things that I wanted to share with you, so I kind of, went fast, but hope you enjoyed it. Thank you again for the invitation to share our project, and good luck with
You're
the rest of
mostly
the
welcome.
semester.
Thank you. So good night to people over there. And we'll see you next week. And I will circulate all over to the email or eCampus about what we're going to discuss further and receive all your questions. Okay, we'll email over to you, Yihyun and Bumjin, if when I get all the questions.
Great,
Sure.
thank you.
Sounds good.
Right.
Thank you. Have a
Bye,
wonderful
everybody.
weekend.
Bye.
Bye.